Synopsis: Kuru feels insecure, and Kenma comforts him. Genre: angst to fluff TW, blood, insecurities. Kuru paced back and forth, hands growing clammy as he held his phone tightly, waiting for an answer from Kenma. He bit his lip in anticipation, then stopped, then bit it again. A few minutes passed before he let out an audible groan, flopped down upon his bed, and pulled up Bokito's contact. Bokito: Kuru bro, what's up? Nothing good. What's wrong, man? Kenma won't answer me. You lol. What's so funny? I mean, did you think he would? Nah, but I hoped he would. Although Kuru knew that Kenma wasn't the best at giving affection, or opening up about his feelings, he always felt a pang of disappointment when all the other boy wanted to do was game and sleep. I just want him to reply to me in less than an hour and a half. Is that too selfish of me to ask? No, of course not, Kuru. I understand how you feel. Akashi wasn't always the most romantic, but you know what I did? Cried? Well yeah, but I also let him know that I was gonna be there for him. That even if he didn't want to talk, I'd always be open to hear what he had to say, or maybe just for a hug. Maybe Bokito was right. Maybe all Kenma needed was some reassurance, a promise from Kuru that he'd stay by his side, even when he was being a jerk who didn't want Kuru's kisses because his face wouldn't stop flaming. But he doubted it. Kenma wasn't Akai. He'd never make the first move, not until Kuru ignored him for hours on end and left him with no choice but to initiate a hug, a kiss, a conversation. You're a good friend, Bokito. AWH. Kuru bro, I'm gonna see RYOK. I'm gonna see ya. He turned his phone off for a second. Because even though Bokito's words playing like a loop inside his head, there was a lump in his throat, a heavy weed of sadness that he couldn't find the root of. He pulled up Kenma's contact again and called him, putting his phone to his ear in hopes that maybe this time he'd pick up. The phone rang, and rang, and rang, and then clicked. He heard shuffling on the other line, then a TSK of disappointment. Hello. Kuru sat up, smiling, even though the lump was still there. At least Kenma had answered. That was enough for him to feel loved. Right, babe? You. Oh, hi, Kuru. Why are you calling? Just want to talk to my boyfriend, if he's not busy with video games. If you are, I can for sure call back later. One thing Kuru would never do in a million years is force Kenma to do something he didn't wanna do. He had learned ever since they were children that doing so resulted in snarky remarks and a distaste for human interaction, more so than usual. Nah, it's cool. I'm done for now. Okay, great. Wanna go out? There's this really nice place in Tokyo that I've been meaning to take you for a while. He closed his eyes, inhaled, and crossed his fingers. All he'd been wanting to do since he began dating Kenma 8 months prior was go out with him, in public, so he could show the people of Japan what was his and his only. Since then, they'd only gone out once, and even then, Kenma had his Switch in his hands for most of the time. It seemed like he wasn't comfortable without it, although Kuru knew he was just shy. Please agree, he pleaded internally. After a moment of desperate silence, Kenma agreed. Sure. Kuru jumped up, his heart thrumming with excitement. Wait, really? And you won't bring your Switch? It was almost as if he could feel Kenma shrug over there, other line. Okay, I won't bring it. He did everything in his power to stop himself from cheering loudly in the middle of the phone call, and settled instead for a tiny squeal. Did you just squeal? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't help it. We haven't gone out in forever, and I'm just really excited. I have to finish my game, but I'll head over to your house in an hour. Sound good? Yes. See you then. Bye. Kenma hung up, and normally, Kuru would pout, but he didn't even notice this time. He did a little dance and then gasped to himself. What am I gonna wear? Before he knew it, an hour had flown by. An hour of fantasizing and smiling and trying on different clothes in his closet until blue was green and green was red and every color merged into an ugly brown. He leaned against his wall, exasperated. Who knew getting ready was such a hassle? He caught himself in the mirror, and all of a sudden, he couldn't look away. But not in the way where he grinned and winked at himself before bragging to everyone that he knew that he was hot stuff. This time, all he could think about was how hideous he looked in this shirt. Seriously? Who let him think that buying this was a good idea? The longer he looked at it, the smaller he felt. Kenma probably thinks you're ugly, a voice said in his head. He shook his head. No, Kenma loves me for who I am. He doesn't care what I'm wearing. He took the shirt off in a hurry, and looked back into the mirror, expecting the problem to be fixed, for him to feel confident again. But now he couldn't stop staring at his hair. His pride and joy now felt like another massive burden on his shoulder. He ran a hand through it, and when it combed back with his fingers, he smiled in satisfaction. But then, his anxiety only arose once more when he saw that he was growing hair above his lips. A moustache? No. His phone pinged. Kenma, I'm leaving in 5. His heart hammered against his ribcage. Kenma can't see him yet, especially not like this. A wreck. A mess. He picked up his phone, breath shaking uncontrollably. No. Take your time. Seriously, I'm in no rush. Okay. I'll be there in 10, then. He sighed to himself. Perfect. Now I have 5 extra minutes to shave this horrible patch of hair. He rushed to the bathroom, unzipping his bag of hygiene essentials and pulling out the razor. He got to work almost immediately, but only 10 seconds in, and he had made a mistake. He cut his upper lip in a hurry to get rid of the hair. Shit. If you thought Kenma wouldn't like you with the shirt, or the hair, or the mustache, he certainly won't like you with an ugly scar on your lip. Silly Kuru, always messing things up for the person he loves. He ripped a piece of toilet paper, and got to work dabbing his lip. Please stop bleeding. Even though Kuru's begging was insistent, desperate, the wound still bled a dark shade of crimson. He was growing more angry by the second, and just slapped a band-aid over it in hopes it'd stop. Once Kenma arrived, he ran back to his room, to his mirror, inspecting everything about himself in a way he never had before. His shoulders were far too big. He looked malnourished. He had too many veins. Each and every flaw crept into his brain, poisoned it, until all he could do was stand the silly Kuru, the voice said. Always thinking he's hot shit, when really, you're just as pathetic and insecure as everyone else. He felt the lump in his throat rise, and he couldn't swallow it down, no matter how hard he tried. He slid down against the wall. I'm so stupid. The lump rose, and suddenly it was on the tip of his tongue. He opened his mouth, and began to cry. He clamped a hand over his lips in a measly attempt to stifle his sobs, but no luck. They were still there, and he still heard them. Pathetic. Why are you crying? The voice sneered. Are you sad because Kenma doesn't like you? He has all the right in the world not to. Shut up. His cry for solitary was so loud, he didn't hear Kenma knock on his door, his earbuds in and his head low. After a couple seconds, Kenma knocked again, but Kyoru was too lost in his tears to notice. The faux blonde knocked once more. Kyoru? Hello. I'm here. Open up, Kyoru. But even as the pounding became louder and more worrisome, Kyoru clutched at his chest painfully. Loser. Idiot. Freak. The words repeated until they became a song with the same heartbreaking tune. Make it stop. After 2 minutes, Kenma had just decided to open the door and go in himself. What is Kyoru doing that he can't swing the door open for me? He thought. The door creaked on its hinges, a sound Kenma had become accustomed with over the years. It was almost not comfortable. Kyoru? And that's when he took out his headphones and heard it. Crying, loud crying he wouldn't have heard if not for the hope of a reply from a safe and sound Kyoru. Kenma tended to think of the worst possible outcomes, but Kyoru always kept him steady, until Kyoru was in need of his help. His heart beat against his chest. He ran into all of the rooms, breathing hard. The bathroom? No Kyoru. The living room? Not there, either. The only place left was his room at the end of the hallway. Why hadn't he thought to check the first? He swung the door open and was greeted with a sight he never wanted to see. Kyoru. Kyoru shot his head up quickly. His eyes were bloodshot, tear tracks stained on his pallid face. He was shirtless, which normally would make Kenma flustered, but now wasn't the time. His upper lip was bandaged, and his bottom lip had begun to tremble when the smaller boy walked into the room. Kenma, I thought you weren't going to be here for another 5 minutes. You idiot, why are you trying to play this off? Kenma rolled his eyes internally, but he was just worried. He had only seen Kyoru cry once before, when they were kids and he had banged his knee against the sidewalk. Never had he imagined that someone who had grown up to be so strong could be crying like he really wasn't. Kenma, I wanted to come earlier. What happened to you? His feet were glued to the doorway. He wanted to walk in and comfort Kyoru, but he felt like he might be trespassing. Like the fact that he had been inside his room a million times no longer mattered, and now everything was a stranger, in a way. Oh, I just cut my lip while shaving and it hurt pretty bad. I'm alright. Should we go? Kenma inhaled and took a step inside, expecting a drastic change. But there was none. Sure, the atmosphere was heavily depressing, but Kyoru looked relieved when he came in. He wiped away his tears and stood up. Kenma walked over and pushed him back down onto the floor. What are you doing? Kenma exhaled the breath he was holding. Here goes nothing. He wasn't good with feelings and affection, not at all, but his boyfriend was clearly struggling, and he was going to be there, however hard it might be for him to do. It wasn't just a cut. Nobody cries like that after they cut their lip. Especially not you. Kyoru looked like he was going to cry again. Kenma sat down beside him. I'm not good with any of this, you know that. But you also know that I'm here for you, and that I care about you. So, wanna talk about it? Kyoru brought his knees up to his chest and buried his head in between them. Kenma reluctantly placed a hand on the back of his head. Suddenly, Kyoru broke down. Kenma's eyes went wide. Damn JT, Kenma, what did you do now? He scolded himself. Kyoru? In between his choking sobs, Kyoru looked up, locking eyes with his very confused but equally concerned boyfriend. Kenma, am I ugly? Is that why you don't hug me or kiss me as much as I hug and kiss you? Kenma was taken aback, dumbfounded. Kyoru Tetsuro, pretty boy of Nekuma, was insecure. He felt ugly? Never had Kenma expected this to happen, and never had he wanted it to. He replied quickly. What? Of course not. Why would you ever think that? Because I'm ugly. Just look at me. My hair doesn't go where I want it to. My shoulders are so wide, have a shadow of a mustache, and now a big, red bump where I tried to shave it. I'm ugly and useless. That's why you don't like me, isn't it? Kenma shook his head hurriedly, his eyes boring deeply into every part of Kyoru he had been too afraid to look at that closely before. Kyoru, I'd like you. I'd like you all the same, no matter what you look like. Kyoru didn't look convinced. He leaned his head down to cry again, but Kenma grabbed his face in a flash. Kyoru sniffled in surprise. Kenma, what happened to babe? A huge wave of confidence had just washed over the faux blonde, but he didn't even notice it. All he knew was that Kyoru, someone that was always there for him, now suddenly felt so alone. He let go of Kyoru's face, stood up, and motioned for the taller male to do the same. Once he did, he placed Kyoru in front of the mirror. He looked away, almost instantly, choking back more tears. And even though it hurt, Kenma stood on his tiptoes, grabbed his face gently, and tilted it back up to face the mirror. Do you see the person in the mirror? The tall one? How could I not? He sticks out like a sore thumb. That's my boyfriend, Kyoru Tetsuro. He's the kindest, funniest, most amazing person I've ever met in my life, and I don't know what I did to deserve him, because honestly I haven't been the best boyfriend. Kenma, please. Kyoru looked so defeated. Kenma felt like he was being stabbed repeatedly, but still, he continued on. One thing that Kyoru knows about me is that I don't really know how to deal with my feelings, or how to handle affection. I'm pretty bad at it, and Kyoru's not. And even though I push him away when he wants to give me a hug sometimes, he's always there with a smile on his face. What are you talking about today? I walked in on Kyoru crying. It was the worst thing I've ever had to see. He told me that he thinks he's ugly, and that must be why I don't show him the love he deserves. Well, I want him to look in the mirror and list out every good thing about himself, and if he can't, I will. Kyoru's heart dropped. Was Kenma trying to embarrass him? He shook his head. There's nothing good about me, Kenma. Fine. Let me prove you wrong, then. Kenma pointed at Kyoru's body through the mirror. Kyoru has a really nice body. His shoulders are the perfect size for his head, and perfect for giving me piggyback rides or picking me up. And see that? That right there is Kyoru's hair. He has very nice hair. I like that it goes wherever it wants, cause he looks cute either way. Kenma's eyes were glossed over with tears, and before he knew it, silent tears were running down his face, and the two were crying. But even with a breaking voice, Kenma pushed on. He pointed at Kyoru's lips. See those? Those are Kyoru's lios. They're my favorite part about him. Wanna know why? Why? Because they're soft, and pretty, and they taste like mango, which I know is his favorite fruit. And he may have cut himself trying to shave, but you know what? That's fine by me. Everybody cuts themselves shaving, it's just natural. Mustache or not, I also like doing this. He wrapped a hand around Kyoru's neck and pulled him down until their faces were only inches apart. Kenma kissed Kyoru's bandage before kissing his lips. After a couple seconds, he pulled away and turned back to the mirror, heart swelling so large he thought it might explode. So you see, everything about Kuru is beautiful. From his feet to his forehead. Everything. And I love him very much. It was silent for a moment. Kuru's head hanging low. Kenma didn't know what he was thinking. Say something. Please. And then he did. I want to be perfect for you. Kenma turned until his back was facing the mirror and his eyes were trained on Kuru. Nobody is perfect, Kuru. Everyone has imperfections. You, me, even Bokuto, as hard as that may be to believe. Kuru let out a teary snort. But those imperfections are what make us beautiful. Okay? They're what make you human. They're what make you real. They're what make you loved. And I don't want you to believe, not even for a second, that you're not. You hear me? Kuru nodded, looking down at Kenma. God, I love him so much, he thought to himself. He wrapped his hands around Kenma's waist, picking him up and holding him tight. Kenma held on just as closely, just as lovingly, and that made Kuru happy. Really happy. Thank you, Kenma. Anytime. I mean it. I'm sorry that I ruined our date night. Kenma shook his head rapidly. No, you didn't. We'll go Tokyo tomorrow, okay? You are more important to me. Don't forget that. Anyway, I should be the one apologizing. It took a full mental breakdown for me to realize I should show my love more often. You don't have to, really. I'll be fine soon, and then we can go back to normal. But I don't want to. I kind of like being this close with you. You do? Yes. I do. Kuru smiled, putting Kenma down and tucking a strand of hair behind his ears. Okay. Then we won't go back to normal. Is that alright? That's more than alright. He kissed him one more time before they sat back down again so Kenma could lean his head against his shoulder. Can I sleep over tonight? You know you don't have to ask. I know. There was peaceful silence for a comfortable moment before Kuru piped up again. Hey, Kenma? His eyes were drooping closed. It was late, and they were both exhausted, and by the morning, their heads and throats were totally hurt. But it didn't matter. Not as long as they had each other. I think you're beautiful, too. Kenma grabbed Kuru's hand. I love you, Kuru. I love you too, Kenma. Maybe things weren't going to be okay right away. It'd take some time for the scars to heal and the image to clear up again, but at least Kuru didn't have to go through it alone or doubtful, because the fact was, Kenma liked being with Kuru, and Kuru liked being with Kenma. And that was enough, Finn.